be when breezes blow with ice and snow. No wonder then I sing time and again.
Welcome to Sparky on Ice, the coldest podcast on the internet. Today is September 5th, and I've been on ice for 23 days. Welcome back, everyone. I know it's been quite some time, 8 months really, since my last episode, and a lot has happened. I am back on the ice for my third deployment, and I guess I should do some catching up before going into the current deployment. Let's see, the last episode was back in December 2020, and things were a little rough. Level yellow on the station had everyone feeling kind of depressed. But things got a little better around the holidays. We had a really fun Christmas party, and I got to DJ most of the night. I did have a great time, and so did all the dancers. The next week, we had iStock, our annual New Year's party. Thanks to COVID, it was considerably smaller this year. I was asked to DJ both the New Year's party and the iStock dance party since they were on different nights. I had an awesome time doing both. I even downloaded a countdown app for my computer so we could do a countdown to New Year's Eve. It was a big hit, and everyone really enjoyed it. Then January hit, and we had to go back to work. We had to reset all of Phoenix Airfield again. The snow had drifted in so much that most of our junction boxes were below grade, and the lights were nearly gone. So the whole crew went out and worked on digging them out so the heavy equipment could do their job. It took us 3 or 4 days to get all the lights and cables free, and another week to get them back online after they groomed the airfield. It was also a weird summer because there was no vessel this year. Not that I'm complaining, but vessel arrival is the first real sign that summer is almost over. The sea ice is broken up, and we have open water. The sea ice still broke up this year, but we didn't have the Coast Guard icebreaker in, so it was a little slower. But it just felt strange not having a ship show up at the end of January. February came, and so did the winter crew and level yellow again. I started working on handover to the new foreman and was told we had to pull the lights up at Williams Field. They never even got used, but at least they were there for emergencies. Luckily, they'd only been there a couple months and didn't have any major storms during that time, so it only took 3 days to wrap them up for storage on the berms. And then I got to go home, and it was a different kind of trip this time. I had already planned on going straight home, but now they required a COVID test to get on the plane, so I'd wait an extra day in Christchurch. I really wanted to get out the same day, but, I can only do so much. But it was nice to get out and walk around without 2 or 3 layers on to keep warm. I did some walking around Christchurch, just taking in the sights and sounds. Then the long plane ride back home. I was really excited to see the family, especially my new granddaughter, who was born in May of last year. She had changed so much in those months I was gone. And I was actually pretty worried about traveling with COVID still being a big deal, especially through the LA airport when I came into the States. But I kept my mask on and stayed away from people as much as I could. And finally, I made it back home. And it was still winter there. But I like winter. We had plenty of snow on the ground, and I really don't mind it that much. The summer at home was pretty hectic. Not only was I working like I did last year, which I took on more because I did hiring as well as ordering parts, and I was also hiring for Palmer Station electricians as well. That was an extra added bonus, I guess. I was also busy planning for the wedding of my middle daughter in June. And there was so much to do to get ready. I had some repairs around the house to get done before the guests started showing up. I had also built the arbor that they stood under for the ceremony. It was a beautiful wedding in the mountains of northwest Montana. I couldn't ask for a better setting, or the wedding was it was perfect, honestly. And right after the wedding, I had to start preparing for my trip south. Honestly, for a while, we were wondering if I would even be able to go. With COVID, like last year, they changed some of the PQ process to include high-risk COVID factors. I happen to be a man of extended girth, and that puts me very close to the BMI limits. I knew this, and had worked pretty hard to make sure I would be under that limit. However, when I did my physical, they said I was an inch shorter than last year, putting me over the BMI limit. I was kind of angry. How did I shrink an inch? Not sure, I'm not that old. So we were worried for most of the summer, wondering if they were going to do waivers, because they didn't do any waivers at all last year. But I kept on working on the assumption that they would do waivers, and we still had that looming over us, but what can I do? About 3 weeks before I was supposed to leave, I was told they would be doing waivers, and I would be one of them. But there was one more hiccup. Medical staff wanted some more info on a procedure I had done a few years ago. And I'd kind of forgotten about this procedure, but apparently I'd written it down somewhere during my PQ process. And it took some doing, but I was finally able to get that info and send it to them with less than a week to go. And then a couple days later, I got my approval, and then I got my travel papers a couple days before I actually flew out. So until the last week, we still didn't really know. Oh, and this year, just like last year, we had to do a quarantine in New Zealand again. So I left on July 13th for a week in San Francisco, then to Christchurch. Honestly, isolation wasn't as bad this year as it was last year. The program had learned a lot of lessons last year and improved on what they could. 1, the food was better. They'd figured out how to feed us. 2, they had a daily Zoom check-in that doubled as our social interactions. I think for me, this was the most important part of the changes. We got to talk in an informal setting. People could ask questions about the ice or the flights or, anything else. And we could just sit for a while and just talk. It was great. It was similar to how it was before COVID, when everybody would go to a restaurant and hang out and talk, or in the lobby of the hotel, wherever they were at. And it was really good to connect with other people going through the same thing we were. And they did almost all of our training while in quarantine. And this does a couple things for us. It gives us something to do besides stare at our computers or a wall or watch movies or whatever we were doing. Something we felt might be useful. And it saves time when we do get on the ice. It is so hard to pay attention to an important safety lecture when you just get on the ice. You've got information overload. You're tired. You're disoriented. You're probably dehydrated. And it's really hard to sit in a chair and listen to a lecture, basically, for 4 hours right after lunch. No matter how much coffee you get, it doesn't help. And we did get to go outside for an hour twice a day in managed isolation. It was nice. It wasn't much of a place to walk, but it gave us some place to walk. And we did get to congregate, although we still had to remain 6 foot apart, so we congregated loosely. And I did get to connect with some great people this way, and I've made some friends. And we had all our COVID tests done, and we finished our 14-day hotel room, and we're scheduled to fly out on Monday, August 2nd. And then Sunday night, we got some bad news. The air crew had started preparing the C-17, and they'd found a broken valve. Well, as it turns out, these valves don't exist in New Zealand. Odd, right? So they had to fly one in from the States, and that was going to take a few days. So here we go, already delayed. Perfect WinFly, just absolutely right on time WinFly. So we were all shuttled to the new hotel, the Break Free, which is actually a pretty nice hotel, but not really set up for long-term stays. It is great for passing through, centrally located in downtown Christchurch, close to lots of food and shopping. But that didn't really matter this time because due to COVID protocols, we were not allowed out of the hotel. But we could socialize normally with masks. But back to the plane. We knew it would be a few days before we got to go, so we made the best of the situation and tried to have fun where we could. I spent my time working on D&D campaigns and setting up my music for DJing and karaoke, make sure everything was going to work. I have a new program this year, and I hadn't really been able to try it out. And I think on Wednesday we got the news that the part was in and they were repairing the plane. Great. We'll probably fly out Thursday. Yay. And everyone began planning their departure. Everybody was packed. Everybody was ready to go. And then later that day, the news came in that they had fixed the part, but they had found another part down the line that was broken. Apparently the valve fed into a hose, and that hose was broken. They didn't know it until the valve was fixed. Who knew? So we knew it was going to be a few more days, so we went back and we started doing more stuff in the common rooms at that point. Movie nights, trivia, more training that would have been done on the ice. Just really anything to pass the time. A few days later, the plane was fixed and we were actually going. We were about a week behind and ready to go. We get on the shuttles and head to the CDC Clothing Distribution Center. As we are waiting for the plane, it starts to snow. And this is actually a big deal in Christchurch since snow is incredibly rare there. But we got on the plane and it takes off. We are finally on our way. Everybody's excited, getting all their stuff together. And it was a very uneventful flight until about 4 hours in. And the plane starts a steep bank. And I had a very bad feeling about this because they never bank. And I was right. A minute or so later, a pilot came on and said, due to weather in McMurdo, we are boomeranging back to Christchurch. and this was my first boomerang. I will tell you, I did not enjoy it one bit. But as usual, we Antarcticans take disappointment in stride. What else were we going to do? So we landed Christchurch, shuttled back to the hotel, and to the same rooms to try again the next day, and the next day, and the next, and on, until Saturday. And we loaded up on the plane Saturday, and we got in the air, and all was good with the world because we were descending into McMurdo after 5 hours and 45 minutes of flight. And we landed, and something didn't feel right when we landed. It felt a little rough, kind of like how it is when we land in a skied plane. And I'm on a wheeled plane on a packed ice runway. It should feel like a runway. It did not. And I was right. They had broken one of the hydraulics on the front landing gear when it landed. Apparently that was a big mess that they had to clean up too. Also meant they could not take cargo or passengers back to Christchurch. So there were about 30 people who were waiting to leave, who had to get back in their shuttles and come back to town. And they had to fly in a special jack to fix the plane, and that took a whole nother week. And during that week, the level was in Station Blue, which was a new level. Last year we had level yellow for COVID. Level blue, basically the same, except we could touch and congregate. I don't really know. I guess just masks are enough, so not too terrible, but still vaguely annoying. And the first week went by pretty quickly. I was getting settled in, taking on some simple tasks at work since the winter foreman was still there and was staying till October. Yay for me. Mostly I was planning for the summer project work and getting everything set up. We did get one day of green before the second flight arrived, and we had a dance party since it was a Saturday night. It was not the best one I've done due to low population and the winter rovers being somewhat grumpy, but it went pretty well once people started showing up. Then that Sunday, I get a phone call from my supervisor telling me the winter foreman had resigned and would be on the next plane. Well, I guess I would just take over 5 weeks early. Second flight came the next day, and since New Zealand was on lockdown due to some COVID spread on the North Island, we went into level yellow. But it didn't seem as bad as last year. I think they redid the level yellow protocols. We no longer have to wait in line for our time in the galley. They were just a little less restrictive, so it was a little better. But a week of yellow is still annoying. Work has been going rather well. I think I have a really good crew so far. We're getting along and getting a lot of work done, mainly dewinterization and preventive maintenance, which is usually what we do during WinFly anyway. I have really high hopes for this summer since I have 2 returnees that already know the place pretty well. And once we got out of yellow, the station returned to pretty much normal. We had an open mic night, trivia, karaoke, and another dance party. Some of the winter rovers, as I said, are still grumpy, but then they always are at WinFly. I know I was when I did my winter. And that brings us up to date. Hopefully now that I'm settled in and operating normally, I can get back to doing the show on a regular basis. I think this year I'll be doing a bi-weekly show since we really don't have much news yet. Maybe later in the summer we'll do a weekly. We'll just play it by ear, but I do hope to do some sort of regular schedule. I have some interesting plans for the show this season. Hopefully I can get them in the works. I do plan on doing more videos for the YouTube channel, so keep an eye on that. Also, next time I will pick up on Antarctic history where I left off last year, so look for full-length shows. And I have to apologize for sound quality this year. I had a really nice mic, but when I got back this year, it had, I don't know, maybe it froze and broke. I'm not real sure, but I'm going to have to replace the USB input on it, and that can take some time because I'm to order a part, and I don't know if I'll ever get the part, but I'll try. Anyway, I guess that's all I have for this episode, and remember, the best way to stay warm is not to get cold in the first place. If you have any questions, you can contact me on Twitter or Facebook at SparkyOnIce or an email at podcast@sparkyonice.xyz. The music used in this podcast is Cold Winter Blues by Lucille, Hegamin, and the Dixie Daisies and is used under public domain.